you have a bare spot on your wall or your fence outside and you want to fill that in with some natural color, we've got a project that would be great for you to try. It's called a living wreath. And this is a really easy project to do. However, it does take some time to put together. And to start off, some of the supplies that you need are some sphagnum moss. Go ahead and soak the sphagnum moss in a bucket of water. And you want it to be nice and stringy like this so it will hold together on your wreath form. Next, you need some potting soil. And go ahead and have that wet too so that it'll stay together in a ball. Also, in your potting soil, you want to work in a little bit of slow-release fertilizer like Osmocote. Work that into your soil so that your wreath can be fed after it's planted. Next, you need some wire, some florist wire, or some fishing line to tie your wreath together. You need a small stick and some floral pins that you'll use to pin the plants onto the wreath. You also need a little bit of rooting hormone. And last of all, you need a wreath frame. Now, all of these supplies can be found at a craft store. So to get started, you just take your sphagnum moss, wring it out just a little bit, and place it on your wreath frame out over the edges about 1 inch on each side. Now, this doesn't really have to be that neat. You just make sure that it's thick enough so that your soil won't drain out. After you have your wreath frame covered with sphagnum moss, then you take your potting soil and place that in the middle of the sphagnum moss. Now, at this point, if you're using rooted plants, you would go ahead and insert them in various spaces around the wreath. If you're using cuttings, go ahead and fill the wreath with soil all the way around. Next, you'll want to go ahead and again, with your sphagnum moss, place that over the top of your soil, making sure that all of the soil is covered. Now, after you've done this, you'll want to go ahead and take your other wreath frame and place that over the top, and you pretty much have a sphagnum sandwich here. Then you take your floral wire or your fishing line and you go ahead and you wrap that around the wreath, much like you would if you were just making a regular Christmas wreath. Now, you've got two choices in filling your wreath with plants. You can either go with cuttings off of plants, or you can use already rooted small plants like in 2 or 3 inch pots. First of all, I want to show you a wreath that we did using cuttings. And these are all cuttings that we found at the teaching greenhouse. And they're plants that are kind of succulent, and they have a trailing pattern. First of all, this one, which has the heart-shaped leaves, is called String of Hearts. We also have one here that looks a lot like bananas and that happens to be called String of Bananas. And the other plant that we chose for this wreath is a string of pearls with a small pearl-looking leaves on it. And this actually makes a nice looking wreath because it has different colors and also different textures on it. Now, the plants that we used were just in hanging baskets at the teaching greenhouse, and this is very easy to do. All you do is take a cutting off of this, and then you take that cutting, strip off a few of the lower leaves, and dip that in a little bit of rooting hormone, and then take your small stick and make a hole in your wreath down to where the soil is. Next, you just want to take that cutting and insert it into the hole and kind of firm up the soil around that. Then, just take the plant and with your floral pins, go ahead and pin the vine into the wreath. And you just do that all the way around. Now you want to water this really well, and you can either place it under a mist bench or just cover it with some saran wrap to retain the water until it roots. And it should take all of these cuttings about 2 weeks to root, and then they'll start to grow and fill in. And as the plant grows, go ahead and continue to pin in the vines with your floral pins as it grows, and it should be filled in about a month where you won't be able to see any of the frame. Now, our next method is to use already rooted plants, and the plants that I used in this wreath are all shade-loving plants. I have Vinca here, and I also have some Mazis, and these have a vining, kind of a trailing pattern, and if you're making a living wreath, it's a good idea to use a plant with a vining pattern. Now, after you have the plants in and the wreath is all tied together, you take the runners off the plants, and much like you did with the cuttings, go ahead and pin the plants down into the wreath. Now, as this grows, you'll continue to pin the runners down, and it should go ahead and spiral around and fill in the wreath really nicely. Now, this is a wreath that you would want to put in the shade because I've used shade-loving plants. If you want a wreath for a hot spot or a spot with a lot of sun, go ahead and use something that's succulent that's going to survive the hot temperatures and the dry. Now, when I talk about dry, that's the thing that you need to watch on these wreaths. You need to check the water every day. And the easiest way to water them is to take them down and just soak them in a pan of water for a few minutes. And here you can tell that this wreath is wet because the sphagnum is darker and this wreath is more dry. So after your sphagnum is dark, it's ready to hang it back up, and you can just enjoy that. So try this project at home and see how you can fill in your wall or your fence with a living wreath.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.